So the title of my today's talk is Insights into some effective renewable energy generation and eco-friendly water conservation techniques. So what do you mean by energy? So we mean energy as the property that must be transferred to an object in order to perform work on or to hit the object. So the unit of energy we know as joules, which is an SI unit, and this can be defined as the energy transferred to an object by the work of moving it a distance of 1 meter against a force of 1 Newton. So before we go into the field of this energy conservation of energy generation, the knowledge of energy is very much important, or how do we define energy is very much important. And by work, we know that the work is done by a constant force, or the work done by a constant force is defined as the distance moved multiplied by the component of the force in the direction of displacement. So in this picture, if you could see, a boy is applying some force F in order to move a box by a distance d, and if he is applying the force at an angle of theta with the normal, then the work done by the boy in order to carry the box from this side to this side, if it is moved by a distance of d, then the work done can be given by the equation W is equal to F into d cos theta. So similarly, you could see in the second picture where you could see MS Dhoni, throwing a ball or hitting a ball straight away for a six in the very last ball of the World Cup, the previous World Cup. You could see that Dhoni is also spending some kind of energy in order to hit the ball out of the park. So here also he has spent some kind of energy, and also you could say that work has also been done by him in order to displace the ball from near his bat to the ground. So that is actually known as energy. So energy is nothing but it is a property that must be transferred to an object in order to perform work on or to hit the object. So when you say about energy, let me take you back to the previous times where people were not very much knowledgeable about the various forms of energy as we are now. So in the medieval period or in the previous time, people used to use their own energy for their work, or they used to depend on sun, they used to depend on various beasts of burden like the horses and all other animals for their energy requirement or the energy sources, and they were used as energy sources. Then long ago, people learned how to use water power to turn paddle wheels and wind power for transportation and irrigation purposes. They started exploring more and more about the various forms of energy. Then they also started to learn how to use the chemical energy stored in the materials like the wood for cooking and heating their homes. But it is only during the late 18th century, during the Industrial Revolution, that people started exploring more and more energy resources, because the energy demand is much higher, and they were specifically dependent on the energies generated from something said to be fossil fuels. So the fossil fuels are nothing but they can be in the form of coal, oil, natural gas, and can be considered to be the non-renewable forms of energy or non-renewable energy resources. By the word non-renewable energy resources, we all know that the fossil fuels, which are said to be non-renewable energy sources, are actually reserved, which is formed over millions of years from decaying plants and animals. And as we use them up, they will not be replenished in our lifetimes. So that will be exhausted. You can't replenish it. If you look at this particular picture, basically a cartoon, where you could see that how we people are dependent on fossil fuels for all our energy needs, starting from our household electric connection to running of our vehicles, how we are dependent on fuel. And in the side, you could see one penguin looking at this vendor and saying that how humans have learned to make energy by using fossil fuels, but that they were not. So we are heavily dependent on the energy from the fossil fuels. Now, when you say fossil fuels, there comes the problem of pollutions. Whenever you're burning the fossil fuels, there leads to the problem of pollution, and that pollution you can say to be in the form of greenhouse gas emissions. Here, the greenhouse gas emissions could be divided into the emission from carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, as well as fluorinated gases, in which the percentage of greenhouse gas contribution by carbon dioxide itself is 65% plus 11 percentage, which is around 76 percentage. So the 65 percentage itself comes from the fossil fuel and industrial processes, and the remaining carbon dioxide comes from the forestry and other uses. So the contribution of this carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas emission is quite tremendous, and that all comes from the use of these fossil fuels. And if you would like to check the global emissions by the economic sector, you could see that the dominant sectors are electricity and heat production, industry, agricultural, forestry, and other land use, transportation, building, and other forms of energy. So these all data are actually being taken from the US Department of Energy's website, where they have actually categorized the energy and the pollution's current scenario. So you could see that here most of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming out from the sector of this electricity and heat production units, followed by agricultural, forestry, and other land use. Then you have the industry, transportation, buildings, and finally all other sources will lead to around 10% of the other energy sources. And then if you would like to see the current global emissions from the fossil fuels from the year 1900 to 2014, you could see there is a gradual increase in the amount of carbon emitted to the atmosphere. If you follow this particular graph, you would see that by the year 2010, we have already emitted more than 10,000 million metric tons of carbon to the atmosphere. That's the current stand right now, and now we are even higher. And if you would like to see the contribution of the countries who has lead to such emission trends, the country China stands at number 1 again, with around 30% contribution, followed by United States with 15% contribution, European Union with 9% contribution, and our country India stands third with around 7% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Russian Federation's with 5%, Japan with 4%, and all other countries combined gives around 30%. So we could see the current share of this global greenhouse gas emissions, and we could see the contribution of our country is also quite significant, around 7%. So that's the amount of the disturbance we are giving it to the atmosphere. Now, as you all know, that higher emission levels will actually result in more significant climate change. And the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is also known as IPCC, has actually concluded that in order to limit the global temperature rise between 2 to 2.4 degrees centigrade, what we need to do is that we have to reduce our pollution levels or the carbon dioxide emissions by around 50% to 85% compared to what was during the year 2000 or the 2000 levels. And that has to be achieved by 2050. But the more worrying thing right now is that the recent studies have actually suggested that climate change is occurring much faster than previously expected, and that even 50% reduction in the global carbon dioxide emissions by 2050 may not be even enough to avoid this dangerous temperature increase. So we are in the verge of having the global temperature increase, and limiting our temperature rise in between 2 to 2.4 degrees centigrade is going to be a big challenge for us until and unless we are able to control our carbon dioxide emissions or the greenhouse gas emissions. Now, with the modern world depending upon coal, oil, and gas for the majority of its energy needs, and the prediction that the world will nearly double its need for energy resources in several decades, it is very important to conserve energy and to investigate the alternate forms of energy or the alternate resources. So a dependency from fossil fuels has to be changed from these non-renewable forms of energy to various renewable forms of energy. And when you talk about these renewable forms of energy, we have already seen that government of India has given a good effort to generate energy from the solar sources as well as from the hydrothermal and nuclear reactors. Wind powers have also been explored. We could also explore this geothermal as well as tidal power. So we have to shift our dependency from these fossil fuels to this alternate source of energy. Though this alternate source of energy is having their own advantages and disadvantages, but still it needs to be explored, and more research is being done in this area to extract more of the energy and to increase the advantageous part and to decrease the disadvantageous part. So there we have to keep on exploring now instead of using the fossil fuels. One such technology which I would like to share for today's talk is the generation of clean energy in the form of clean electricity by a particular reactor which is known as fluidized bed biomass gasification technology. This fluidized bed biomass gasification technology can be either a biomass gasification technology, or it can also be a coal-based gasification technology, where this gasification is a specific term which says that you have an partial oxidation of partial oxidation happening up, which means that instead of the formation of carbon dioxide, it leads to the formation of gases like carbon monoxide as a result of partial oxidation. So here in this entire process, what happens is that if you use some of the waste biomasses which are actually available in plenty, and also if you use some coal samples, or if you use a mix of biomass and coal samples, which is known as blending technique, you can send it or you can put it inside a fluidized bed gasification chamber, which is nothing but a very high temperature operated reactor, where you are allowing some kind of specific reaction environment to happen inside. And when you have the solid particles going there, you actually blow air from below, and because of this the blowing air, what happens is that the solid particles, which if you consider here as small solid particles, it will fluidize inside its column, and during this fluidized behavior, the behavior of the solid will transform into liquid. And when this behavior gets transferred from solid to liquid, it results in a greater heat and mass transfer. It also results in a good temperature distribution, as well as the reaction environment is very much higher. The higher the agitation, you have greater reaction environment, and that leads to the formation of some synthesis gases, which are actually nothing but very high calorific value gases, consisting of majority of the gases are either carbon monoxide, hydrogen, and methane, which are actually very high in calorific value. So that high calorific value gases can be actually formed inside this column. And when the mixture of this high calorific value gases as well as the burnt particles comes inside the cyclone separator, due to the effect of the cyclone separator, you have the dust out in the form of biochar. Or if you are using the biomass gasification technology, we say is biochar. If you are using a coal, it is only said to be char. And that char can be used for some very good soil amendment purposes. I'll come to it later. And the synthesis gases, which are actually coming out from the top of the cyclone separator, can be sucked and can be passed through some gas cleaning system, which leads to the production of very cleaner fuels known as carbon monoxide, hydrogen, and methane, which are known as synthesis gases. And because of this high calorific value nature of the synthesis gases, it can straight away be passed to some kind of gas generation system, where these gases can be used very effectively to produce electricity. So these are said to be very clean energy generation technique, where both the you are using the biomass or the coal, or the blended mixture of biomass and the coal, which is known as co-gasification, could be used to generate electricity, as well as the burnt biomass particles, or the burnt coal samples could be obtained in the form of char, which could be sent to or which could be mixed with our soil for various soil amendment purposes. So this is basically a carbon negative process, and has got a very good significance in the field of clean energy generation. Designing such kind of gasifiers are actually pretty difficult, because it has to operate at very higher temperatures. The material of construction has to be good, and if you want to have very high power output for this bed gasifiers, you have various design equations to consider. And once the design equations are considered, you can go for scale up of the reactor, and then such kind of reactors could be used for clean energy generation purposes. Highlighting some of the research work which we have done in our lab in order to find out some of the very prominent biomasses which could be used in such gasification processes from the northeastern part of India. As you know, the northeastern part of India can be considered to be a biomass hotspot, having so many varieties of biomass here and there. And our research lab, we have tried to actually check some of the most widely available biomass waste in the form of lignocellulosic biomasses or sawdust, and we try to check out their feasibility in such kind of gasification purposes, which may lead to high calorific value gases with a very good kind of a process situation or a process condition. There we try to take various samples like the Tectona grandis or the teak, Hevia brasiliensis, or the rubber root. This rubber root specifically being from Tripura, we are known to produce the second largest producer of rubber. So from various sources we also get those Hevia brasiliensis or the rubber sawdust wood is also available. We have also checked the Melacona bassifera, Schemia wallichi, Magnifier indica, and all other stuffs, including rice straw and something said to be Remy, which is scientific name is Bohemia nivea. And we found out that most of the samples can give you a good amount of gross calorific value of around 20 megajoules per kg and more. And if you look at this table here, we have actually found out two of the samples, like the rubber root sample and the Bohemia nivea, which is this particular plant, as well as the rubber root sample, can give you very good properties in the terms of gasification properties, and it can lead to very good amount of synthesis gas generation as well as the energy generation. So these were actually characterized in our lab, and we had also carried out various other characterization techniques like the differential scanning calorimetry, the thermal analysis, as well as the other electron microscopy images, as well as the FTIR samples. This has already been done in our lab. And if you want to, if you're interested to look at some of the very potential biomasses which could be used for such gasification purposes, you are free to refer this particular journal, which I have cited here. So these are some of the samples which we took from the northeastern part of the country. And as I have already said that after the syn gases have been extracted out of the sample, then you are left with something said to be biochar or the char. If your feed materials are bio-based samples or the biomasses, you get biochar. Otherwise, if you use coal, it will only give you the formation of char. So these chars are actually found to be very much good in its nature, owing to its very high surface area and its structure regarding to its porosity. This particular work was funded by the DBT Beach Twinning Program with IIT Guwahati, where we are still trying to implement such kind of biochars obtained from such processes for the removal of heavy metals from the soil. Because of its very highly porous and its very effective nature, it can give very high water holding capacity. It can also give very high ion exchange capacity, and because of this porous nature, and it also gives very good mass transfer of oxygen in order to have a very healthy microbiological concentration inside the soil. And also it is very much helpful in the manipulation of the soil pH. For example, if some soil is very much acidic in nature, and if a particular plant grows only in the basic environment or the alkaline environment, then such kind of the alkaline biochar can be used in combination with the soil, and that will lead to an overall increase in the soil pH, and that will lead to a very good growth of the plant. So all those stuffs we are still exploring, and we are expecting very good results from that. So this kind of processes will not only lead to gasification processes, will not only lead to clean energy generation, but also it will help in this soil amendment purposes. These are quite interesting areas in which people can start explore, and people are already exploring. Some of the other very exciting areas in this area is using the computer-based simulation tools like the Aspen Plus as well as ANSYS, where these process simulation softwares are very much helpful in actually designing the entire process and the scale up of the entire process, and to actually predict what will be the final product output. So this will lead to a very good design of the entire process. And the CFD software will give you a good idea about what is the internal fluid dynamics or the internal dynamics happening inside the column, and all those stuff will give you a pretty good idea regarding to the working of the gasification fluidized bed gasifier unit. So this computer-based simulations can also be used for various purposes. If you would like to get more details about such simulations, you can refer this to journals of mine, and you could get a good idea about the gasification processes and the use of this computer-based simulation in the gasification processes. So after that particular gasification process, which is actually a carbon negative process, let me take you to another very exciting field of energy generation, as well as clean energy generation, as well as water purification technique, which is known as the PRO technique, or the pressure retarded osmosis technique, where you could generate both clean energy from wastewater and also produce potable water. So that means that if you have wastewater, you can clean that wastewater, and during the cleaning process, you can also generate clean energy. How is it so? Let me give you a very brief look. For such kind of processes, what you use is are basically something said to be pressure retarded osmotic membranes. These are nothing but these are actually some advanced version of the forward osmosis membranes. These can be cellulose acetate based membranes, which can be hollow fiber based. So in that hollow fiber, if you take this particular diagram, in the hollow fiber, if you take, we pass some kind of a solution known as feed solution through the internal part of the hollow fiber, and outside we have the draw solution. Now, if you take the same diagram over here, if this is the membrane or the semi-permeable membrane, and if you pass a particular draw solution of very high osmotic potential, for example, in our case, if you use some amount of ammonium carbamate solution, whose osmotic potential is very high, and in this side, if you use wastewater, what will happen when this ammonium carbamate or the draw solution is coming inside the or they are allowed to pass through the membrane, and outside if you have the feed solution, what happens? Because of this high osmotic potential, the clean water will pass through the membrane from this side, and this will come and get mixed with the draw solution, and the amount of draw solution will actually increase. So if you look at this diagram again, if you are passing feed solution from here, and outside if you have the draw solution, because of the high osmotic potential of this draw solution, what will happen? Only the clean water will pass through the semi-permeable membrane of this forward osmosis membrane, and the water will come and get mixed with draw solution. So if you again note here that if you are using say 100 liters per hour of ammonium carbamate solution at some pressure, you are pushing it inside the this pressure retarded osmotic membrane, and similarly if you are again giving 100 liters per hour of wastewater here, when it comes inside, due to this osmotic potential, you could see around 40% is transmittance of the clean water from this wastewater to the draw solution, and as a result, initially it was 100 lph, and as a result of this forward osmosis, what happens? You get an increase in the amount of this draw solution, and this increased amount draw solution with that pressure, if you are passing it through some kind of a turbine system, you can easily generate some kind of energy. And here you are left with the concentrated wastewater. So some of the clean water is being transferred from this wastewater side to the draw solution side. Let me give you an example. In this particular GIF picture, you could see that the same pressure retarded osmotic membrane was used, and here you see that one is the draw solution, this particular draw solution, and it is the feed solution. So the draw solution is drawing some of the clean water from the feed solution, which is the wastewater, and as such it is filling up quicker compared to that because of its high osmotic potential. So using this particular knowledge, if you actually develop an entire process flow diagram where this will represent the pressure retarded osmosis osmotic membrane place, where the high flow rate ammonium carbamate solution, if you pass it through this turbine system, it will lead to the formation of clean energy. And after that, there is a specific property of this carbamate solution. What it means is that after you have generated energy using this turbine system, you can straight away pass it to something said to be a distillation column. What happens in the distillation column? Here we supply some kind of heat, some kind of energy in the form of heat, and because this ammonium carbamate solution is very volatile, at around 60 degrees centigrade, the ammonia in the carbamate solution will separate itself from the water, and it will pass through the other part, and as it is getting separated from water, what happens? You get clean water here. So this clean water is nothing but it is actually the water which has been extracted out of the wastewater in the PRO process. And so this will lead to the formation of both energy as well as clean water. And now what happens is that when you have this ammonia and the carbon dioxide gases there, it could be compressed, and it could be condensed and absorbed and sent back to the system back again for its energy recovery process. So this particular process was actually initiated in the MIT labs in US, where they actually tried to generate energy from the point where the seawater and the river water meets the sea. So what happens is that the seawater is having very high osmotic potential, and the river water is having less osmotic potential, comparatively less osmotic potential. And because of this, osmotic potential, if they use such kind of an pressure retarded osmotic based membranes, they could generate huge amount of energy. So this particular idea has actually come up from that concept. So this will lead you to very very innovative kind of energy generation, as well as it will also lead to clean water. Let me show you one more innovative work which we were doing right now, and it might be of interest to you. Here we are actually taking care of the gray water coming out from our washing machines. We know that day-to-day activity we are using these washing machines, and so much of gray water is coming out from such kind of setups, and that detergent containing or the surfactant containing gray water, when you discharge it to the environment, leads to various kind of the flora and fauna problems. So why not we try to actually extract the detergents, as well as if you could recycle or recover the water, that will lead to a great environment friendly process. So for that particular keeping into mind that particular concept, we try to develop a process for the treatment of gray water, where initially we used some kind of membranes which are well available in market. We used hollow fiber ultrafiltration membranes, as well as we used spiral wound membranes, ultrafiltration membranes, and also we use the spiral wound reverse osmotic membranes, which are well available in the market. And we try to check whether this kind of membranes could be used for the recovery of surfactant as well as water, so that the next time you are cleaning your clothes, you use the recovered surfactant as well as the recovered water. So that will give you a good water conservation, as well as it will also help you in saving money, or help you in cutting costs for buying detergents each and every time. So what happens in this particular process is that in the first stage we use an ultrafiltration process, where the feed from the gray water tank is being passed through this ultrafiltration process. And what happens is that during this process, most of the dirt available in the gray water is actually being separated from the detergent solution, and that detergent solution comes and gets stored here, which is said to be ultrafiltration product tank. Now from this tank, we are using some kind of reverse osmotic membrane techniques, which has been actually optimized depending on this process condition. And using this RO technique, we are able to actually produce clean water, as well as the surfactant which is released from this RO as an reject will come and get stored in the UF product tank. So if you keep on operating this particular process more and more time, what will be left will be very concentrated surfactant solution here, clean surfactant solution here, and the clean water product here. Let me give you an typical data which we have obtained in our lab. Initially we took a gray water which was around 750 ppm TDS, which is known as total dissolved solids, with a turbidity of 106 NTU, nepherometric turbidity units, and BOD, the biological oxygen demand was 290 milligram per liter. So in this process, as you could see that it is very much turbid, as well as the TDS is very high. We try to separate the dirt out from this gray water, and we try to recover very concentrated surfactant solution as the UF product tank. So we were able to get the final recovered surfactant solution of this concentration. The TDS was very high, around 830 ppm. Turbidity has decreased from 106 to around 12.6 NTU. That means the concentrated surfactant solution is now clean, and the BOD has also decreased. And the water which you have obtained is of very good quality, of around 25 ppm and 0.41 NTU and 20 milligram per liter. This water could be again modified a little bit for drinking water purposes, or otherwise you can store that water, and whenever you go for next couple of washes, you can use both of this recovered surfactant as well as this permeate water back into your washing machine system, and you could clean your water again. So that will lead you to very effective and environment friendly process, and also lead you to conserve a lot of water. As well as we know that whenever you're using some kind of membranes, there's always a problem of fouling. So in order to tackle that fouling problems, you can also take into consideration some of the backwash and the backwash flushing methods, which will lead to the enhancement in the lifetime of the membranes. And we could find out that the backflush method, where specifically for the spiral wound membranes, we have found out to be very much good compared to the backwash technique. And you could see that we could recover, or we could actually restore the membrane back again to its initial condition using this kind of a technique. So this kind of technique, if being utilized, you could actually lead to a lot of environmental friendly pollution, or it will lead to a gray water treatment, specifically the gray water coming out from your household washing machines. So these are very innovative techniques, and a lot of people are also working on to develop this technology so that it can reach your home. So with all those stuffs related to this energy basics and energy generation, clean energy generation, and this energy stuffs and all, what is more important is actually energy conservation, because this energy conservation is such an important topic in day-to-day life that we all can actually ensure or can have an energy being, we can conserve this energy for our future in with very small actually steps. We can conserve a lot of energy. What we can do is that, if we insulate things properly, we can, if we turn off lights when not in use, and only using appliances judiciously, are some of the actual ways by which we can limit the energy use in our homes. And also, say, using this carpooling methods, bicycling and taking public transport methods are some effective energy saving ideas. So if all of us are actually following such energy conservation techniques, that will actually lead to a lot of energy being consumed. So instead of, if you conserve a lot of energy, what happens is that yeah, the dependency on the fuels or the fossil fuels will be a little bit less compared to what it is now. So energy conservation is also a very much important task which we need to follow in our day-to-day life. So that's the entire thing which I was thinking to share for today's talk, like what are the various avenues and what are the innovative ideas by which one can now generate energy, as well as clean up the wastewater, and that can lead to a very good environmental health, or it will lead to a decrease in the pressure of the environment. So all those stuffs, if it could be done, and a lot of research is actually going on in day-to-day basis, and I would request all of our youths to come up into this research area, and figure out a lot of exciting and innovative ideas of actually tackling day-to-day problems, and that will lead to a very developed country of us, and we could succeed more and more in our future. So with this, let me come to my final slide, where I would say that conserve energy and save water, because energy conserved is life preserved. So that's all from my side. I thank you for spending your time in listening my talk. If you have any queries, you can drop down your questions in my mail ID, which is Harjit Nath, HARJEET, Harjit Nath @ gmail.com. Or if you're interested to go through some of my publications, you can straight away, you're welcome to drop your email to me. So thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much.